Good morning. And before we get started, I think we didn't quite do birthdays, and I know there's at least one that's coming up this week. And Damien, I still feel a little loud here, so if we can bring it down. So if you're having a birthday last week, today, or next week, if you would like to stand up, and we would love to honor you. I know we've got anybody else? Great. And I have totally... Huh? We get him next Sunday. Okay. And I'm sorry, I totally spaced on Lisa, thank you. So, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lisa. Happy birthday to you. Many more. Lisa's one of those brave people who gets to celebrate her birthday on Christmas Eve, so has to share presents with that Jesus guy, so thank you. So, and I also wanted to mention that the teens will be selling mistletoe at the back here, as well as the wonderful pies and cookies, which I know at least one has already been purchased and flown out the door. So you might want to make sure you get back there in time before Christine and I buy them all up. So this morning is the fourth and final Sunday of the Advent season, and we've talked about this Advent as being the place where we're preparing in consciousness for the coming of light, the return of light. And the light will happen, but for us to be open to it, we have to open up to it. And so this is a wonderful season of 4 weeks of taking a look at what it is that we need to do in consciousness to open up more to this always present light within us. And it's a wonderful path to follow. So the first week of Advent, we began with looking at the quality of hope. Then this season of seeming darkness, where the sun seems to be going away and the darkness seems to be growing, that we remember that there is a light, and it gives us hope, and it's a place to start. So I look at it as when we're walking through a dark time in our lives, we remember that there is something on the other side of it. The old phrase, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. That there is something more than just this, and that we will come out of the other side of that. And so that gives us hope. As we begin to have hope, and as hope begins to brighten within our consciousness, then we open up to the quality of love. When we feel hopeless, we don't give love very easily. But when we start to have hope, we can start to return to giving love. And as we know, what we put out comes back to us. And so as we give more love, we receive more love. And love is that light that lights us up. And then last week, we honored the quality of joy. We used the phrase from Paul, who said, "Rejoice, rejoice." And that was our call this past week, was to rejoice, because we're beginning to start to realize the light is coming back. The darkness is slowing down. If you look at just the way that the sun is, the days are not getting darker faster, they're getting darker slower, because they're coming down to the peak of that. Does that make sense? Did I make sense with that? Okay, good. So today we finally take a look at the idea of peace. And so our theme this week is peace. And when we look at peace, when we finally are becoming aware that this dark night of the soul is over, that the light really is returning, we move into a place of peace. We become more at peace. So as we learn to trust love and law, we become more peaceful. As we begin to trust this process of the universe, we become more peaceful. Our mind spends less time being agitated. The Bhagavad Gita says, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, he's talking about the qualities of people who are most in alignment with him. And he says, "Not agitating the world, nor by it agitated. They that love spirit stand above the sway of elation, competition, and fear, accepting life, good and bad, as it comes." So as we move into peace, we're not being swayed, we're not agitating the world, and we're not letting the world agitate us. We begin to become centered and peaceful. And so this then allows the birth of the Christ consciousness within us. This then allows us to be able to see the light that is already present, but that we have been so agitated or so worried about that we haven't been able to see it. So I invite you this week to practice that quality of peace, to sit in that quality of peace, knowing that all is well, no matter what it looks like in the outer world, because you know and trust that spirit, that light within each of us. So that's our Advent. Our talk today is, we look too far away from reality, and this is reality with a capital R. And this is one of my favorite Ernest Holmes quotes. We had the reading up there. And Ernest was about it being simple. Ernest very much believed in the KISS principle, keep it simple, seeker, right? And the vision that we have from that is that we believe that the universal spirit, which is God, operates through a universal mind, which is the law of God. And right there is the summary of our teaching. There's a universal spirit that operates through one mind. Ernest says, the light is greater than the darkness, nor has the darkness any power over the light. By merely bringing the light, the darkness vanished into its native nothingness. See, we don't have to fight the darkness, right? We just bring in the light. This is the power of reality over seeming opposition or apparent separation. When we move into the reality of the fact that there is only God, there is only light, there is only love. The darkness, whatever that darkness is, vanishes. It can't stand in the face of that. So we can get all caught up in making our relationship with the infinite overly complicated. You know, we have to have certain rituals, we have to have certain ways we eat, and we have to have certain postures we use, and we have to have certain words or incantations or chants we do in order to please a principle that doesn't need to be pleased. See, I love it that sometimes I look at the Old Testament, the very older parts of the Old Testament, and they're trying to please the God that is causing earthquakes or volcanoes and that. And in there, it's like God, if God is unhappy, then he goes and destroys Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Okay. But if we look over at the South Pacific Islanders and they're offering, doing offerings to the goddess Pele to not do a volcano, we think that's kind of, isn't that cute and traditional? But over here, this is the word of God. But it's the same word. We're trying to please the God because we don't understand that tectonic action and the natural flow of how the earth works is really what's going on. We don't have to please principle. We don't have to please God. You and I already are the pleasure of God in form. Just right now. Right as you're sitting in the chair. Exactly right now. You and I are good enough. You and I are God enough. And so as we begin to become aware of that, we can start to let go of all the things that we do, and then of course we get into arguments with other people on their processes of trying to please the principle and say, no, our process is better than your process. Okay? And we don't need to do that. We can let that go. Ernest says to return to a sane simplicity is one of the first and most important things to do. All people receive some light, and this light is always the same light. There is one nature diffused throughout all nature, one God incarnated as all peoples. You and I and everybody else on this planet and everything else on this planet are all one. We're one of the same infinite oneness. We are one. Last week we spoke about having a personal experience of that one, and the invitation to have a direct experience, a personal experience, and how to recognize that and apply it in our lives. And as we do that, we begin to find out how it works, how we work with it, and our lives start to shift and change. And we find out that it's not that difficult, it's not that complicated. It's not always easy, by the way. When Ernest uses simple, simple does not always mean easy, right? We know how it works, but it's not always, for us, it's a challenge sometimes because we've been conditioned to having it work this way, to find out that it really works this way and to change our thinking. Ernest says, let us do away with a ponderosity of thought. That's one of my favorite phrases in the whole Science of Mind textbook, a ponderosity of thought. Spellcheck doesn't like the word ponderosity. I wanted to replace it with ponderosa. Let us do away with a ponderosity of thought and approach the thing simply and quietly. It is the nature of the universe to give us what we are able to take. It cannot give us more. And if we understand that, it's the nature of the universe. The universe is constantly giving us. And it gives us how much we can take. So if there's an area in my life where I'm experiencing a lack, it's my own inability to accept more. And that's what I get to work on. And that's the basis of our entire teaching. We live in a universe which corresponds to our thought and our belief. It corresponds to my thought and my belief. In Isaiah it says, before they call, I have answered. That's because the gift is already given. The gift is already given. The light is already on. Or it says another thing where he says we can either sit in the shade and the shadow or we can move into the sunlight. Okay? They're both available to us. So how does this work? It says the relationship between the individual and the universal mind is one of reflection. That is, what we image for ourselves, it images for us. So the universe doesn't care. The universe is kind of like a movie projector. Okay? And so what we image with feeling and belief, we manifest. Because the universe corresponds to our imaging. My friend Terry McBride, who some of you may have heard, when he was younger in life, he had an accident on a construction scene area where he needed a back surgery. I think he broke a vertebrae or several vertebrae or something. He needed a back surgery, had the back surgery, the back got infected with E. coli, and it took him 27 more surgeries over a period of years to get himself back to where he could function. And during that time, doctors told him he would never walk again, and he would never, be able to function, in almost any way again. And there was a point where he had a colostomy bag because his colon had been so riddled with the E. coli, and they said you'll always have to have a colostomy. And the title of his book he wrote about this adventure, by the way, is called The Hell I Can't. Okay, he's kind of a construction zone religious scientist, is what I call it. Construction worker religious scientist, and I like that about him, actually. And so at one point in time he said, there's no way I'm going through the rest of my life with a colostomy. And so he decided that he was going to go ask his doctor, who was not a real supportive person, who was very supportive in him believing that he was never going to get over this stuff. And he just needed to accept it and get on with it. Okay? And he was of a different mindset. He had read the Bible that said, with God all things are possible, and he actually believed it, fully believed it. Okay? And so he spends some time, he knows this doctor doesn't believe that himself, and so he spends some time visualizing, imaging. He wants to know what he needs to do in his body to heal the colostomy so that he doesn't have to have it anymore. So he images having this meeting with the doctor in which they have a nice conversation in which the doctor says, and this is what you need to do to make it happen. So he works on this for like a month. He works himself up to it for about a month, finally makes an appointment with the doctor when he's really clear in his imaging, walks into the doctor's office and starts to ask him what would it take to get over the colostomy. He says the doctor just blows up at him, starts yelling at him, you're never going to get over that colostomy. You're always going to have a colostomy. You need to just get used to it. You need to just accept it. Terry, get real. In order to have that happen, you'd have to have this happen and this happen and this happen and this happen. And that ain't going to happen. And he smiled and he walked out because he got the 4 pieces of information that he needed to know of what they need to heal in his body to have the colostomy happen. The conversation didn't go the way that he visualized it going, but the outcome, what he needed to know, happened. That was the imaging quality that he had, and he was very clear in it. And then, of course, he went to work with that imaging quality and healed his body to where he no longer had a colostomy. By the way, today he's since climbed Mount Rainier, and walks just fine. He's a little bit older than I am. He's been around doing this stuff, and proven to all those doctors who said you just have to accept it, you're going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life, wrong. So that's the power of that. So our part is to create the images we truly want. If the universe is imaging with us, if it's providing the images we give it, it's our job to create those images that we truly want. So the question then is, what do I contemplate? What is it that I contemplate most often? What's most often going on in my mind? Sometimes when I listen to my own mind, I don't like what's most often going on there. It's kind of not what I want, imaging. What do we love by paying attention to it? What is it that we pay attention to so much because we love it? So imagine a movie projector, that the light is always on. That light is always on the movie projector. and it shines through the lens and it projects the film onto the screen, right? Okay. This is, no, I don't think we have any young people who don't understand movie projectors, so I think we're good here. The light that's shining through the projector has no agenda about the film running through in front of it, does it? It doesn't sit there and just go, I'm not going to shine on that film. I don't like that film. It's just on, shining, expressing, being light, okay? We are the projectionists. We get to choose what's the film I run in front of this light. Now, we don't have to create the light, right? It's always on within us. You and I can't become more light. We already are that. But we can become more open to the flow of the light and to the flow of what we're putting in front of us. Okay? All we have to do is choose the film that we're going to run in front of it. And so many times our films have elements that were not consciously chosen. Okay? We think we're running a film of peace, happiness, and good relationships or something, and something else starts to go on. The other day I was watching a YouTube of bloopers from different newscasts. And there was this one newscast where they were showing the newscaster, and she was talking about it, and then she wanted to connect with a reporter on the scene. And she said, we now have a report from so-and-so who's on the scene. And the screen splits, and you can see the other reporter, and the other reporter clearly does not hear her, misses the cue. And so she's just kind of standing around, looking around, and live on camera, on TV, and all of a sudden you hear this background track from probably the producer screaming obscenities about somebody get that person's earplug into her ear so that she can hear it, and how dare this happen, and how could you do this to me? And this whole track, audio track, is running in front of this blooper, full out with this very colorful language, shall we say, person. Eventually the woman gets the reporter gets her earpiece in, does the report, and still you hear the guy on the track running through, okay? Still mad, and still swearing at everybody in probably the production room or wherever about how could they let that happen and how could they let him down, and it's all personal to him, of course, like that. And so his whole track is running and interfering with the entire newscast. Once in a while I have that track running in my mind. I don't know about you, but once in a while I have that track running in my mind. And so we have the film that we want to run, but because there's an underlying destructive track in the way, we run something else. We say something else. So this week, what I want to invite us to do is to pay attention to the movie you're projecting. Pay attention to the movie you're projecting. What's working? What's working about your movie? And what could be improved? In your movie, the good news is your movie can always get better. Your movie can always get better. See, we're working in a field of infinite good. Our movies can always get better, no matter how good they are. So what movie am I running? How can it be improved upon? If it's working, if it's not working, just notice that. If you have an unwanted track, this is the second part. If you have an unwanted track running, begin to turn the volume down that unwanted track. When I was younger, I was working with what I called my angry inner teenager. Okay? And I had a teenager that was not happy and sabotaged internally, emotionally, a lot of what I would do. Okay? And I would start to do something, would start to work, and all of a sudden, it's like this part of me, this inner teenager, would start to sabotage that. And so eventually, by listening to the teenager, by dialoguing with that inner teenager, by understanding what that inner teenager really needed to express, I began to take down the volume level with which that operated in my life. Okay? So if you have an unwanted track running, notice it, become aware of it. If you're not sure it shows up in your life, you'll just notice. Okay? And pay attention. And sometimes it's so subtle. Sometimes it seems like this is just my normal. This is how it always is. Things never work out for me. Okay? That's an unwanted track running through your mind. I'm constantly afraid of something or other. That's an unwanted track working through your mind. I'm constantly I'm constantly experiencing old age means this. Being a man means this, being a woman means this, living in Reading means this, living on the planet at this time means this. It's when we start to add meaning, when it starts to, it's that track that it's so subtle and it's so constantly running that it just seems normal. So pay attention to that track in your life and where it is and what it's saying, and see if you can begin to turn the volume down and replace it with what you would really like to hear instead. And then finally, choose a new track to create an even more wonderful movie. Choose a new track, or add to the track you already have going to expand it. Ask your inner wisdom self for guidance. How do I do that? And ask yourself the question, how wonderful can it be? How wonderful can my life be? What a powerful question rather than what's going wrong, right? How wonderful can my life be? It's the nature of the universe to give us what we are able to take. I invite you this week to open up to more good than you've ever experienced before. More light, more love, more vibrant life energy than you've ever experienced before or even thought you could experience. And you don't have to know how. Our willingness to open up to that is more powerful. And the image, our image, is matched by the universe's image. I want to close with a quote from Ernest, who says, "The will of God is always towards that which expresses life and happiness." Isn't that great? We always want to run around going, what's the will of God? What's God's agenda in this case? God's agenda is more life and more happiness. Okay? You can always count on that. Anything else that it feels like it's not is not the will of God. That's our track getting in the way. The will of God is always towards that which expresses life and happiness. Life is a motion picture of subjective causes. What is the screen, and are the figures real? Yes and no. Real as figures, but not self-created and not self-perpetuating. Happy is the one who holds the projecting machine firmly in his conscious thought and who knows how to make conscious use of it. The figures in your life are real, but they have no power of their own. They are not self-conscious and they're not self-creating. We give them the power. So take this week the machine, the projection machine of your own consciousness, and use it wisely and use it joyously and have fun with it. That's my invitation. Let's move into prayer. I know that there is only one presence. There is only one light. There's only one light. There's only one infinite love. That is all that there is. And each of us is one of that. That energy creates us, and then it creates our lives through us. We just simply get to share in the nature of God. We already are life. We already are love. We already are joy. We already are that light ourselves. And so I speak my word that this week each of us feels that more powerfully, projects that life energy more powerfully, creates movies that support us in our own life, in our own mind, in our own imaging, that we watch and pay attention to our imaging and create images we love and lives we love. That is why we are here. Spirit is here to have a good time as and through us. And we say yes to that. And so for this I'm grateful. For the joy, for the love, for the good of Spirit manifesting in, through, and as each of us, I am so grateful. And I release this word into that law that knows how to bring it about, knows how to move it into form and expression. I don't have to figure it out. The law just naturally does that. It's just a process of growth. And it is done, and so it is. Bless you. Thank you.